folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and welcome to Look Back. This is where I take a look at reviews I did last year, this week, and 5 years ago this week, and 10 years ago this week, and tell you what I think about those games today, if I think about them at all. So we'll start with a year ago. Oh man, this was not a good week a year ago from many games. Theomachy, this is a game in which it tried to cram so much into one game. You had a pantheon of gods, you were going up against other people, and you were doing so with a mix of poker and betting and deck building, and it was just a mess. Bad graphic design, the game was excruciatingly slow, just a huge mess. Then Stratos, this is another game that just had too much going on. In this game, you had these different heroes, and you're running across trying to get victory points. A lot of luck in the game, but also just a really slow slog as you made these different characters, and then you would run them across the board and fight someone else, but they could see you coming. It was like, I'm coming to get you. Just not a very good game. Raid and Trade. This is a game which sounds fun. You go around, it's post-apocalyptic, and you raid these different places, get the resources you need to trade for other things. That's kind of cool, except again, a huge chunk of luck, very slow and very obvious. I'll go here, raid this, then move here. Just was not very fun. Daedalus Sentence. Now this game was okay-ish, I suppose. It's a cooperative game in which you're trying to break out of a prison. And the whole, neat point of the game was that there's these spinning rings, and it's really cool. The game is way overproduced and overpriced for what it is. Just this giant, giant game with these spinning rings. And so I wasn't really a big fan of how, I like big games, but this one didn't feel like a big game. And then after that, just kind of a lot of luck, go through, flip tiles, oh, this is where I need to go. Kind of a puzzle trying to get out and find things. Just wasn't very fun. Then we had Burgundy. Now this one I like. Okay, this is the typical game that's been out for a long time where you have a whole bunch of blocks that got from a thrift store. The problem is there's many of these other games that exist now, and many of them do a much better job than this one. So while stacking blocks is fun and try not to make them fall over, this one hasn't aged very well. But I did play some good games. Well, Jason and I took a look at Mystery of the Abbey, which has been out for a while from Days of Wonder, and I hope this one gets reprinted at some point. Days of Wonder is one of the best logical games, deduction-style games that replaces Clue, really, as you're trying to figure out what monk committed murder. It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's fun, and back and forth as you ask questions to each other, trying to solve the mystery. I also took a look at the Castles of Burgundy card game. Now, Castle of Burgundy is widely, hailed as one of the greatest games of all time. I actually like the card game better. It does what the board game does in a faster time as you're drafting cards and kind of building up a selection of cards in front of you using dice. Very fun. And then I reviewed 2 expansions for Eldritch Horror, The Signs of Carcosa, and Strange Remnants, and I liked both of them a lot. I guess I liked one slightly more than the other, although I couldn't tell you why now because I have them all mixed up in my set. Just one big Eldritch Horror, which of course is fun to play. So let's jump back now to 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, I played Pichet, which is one of those games that you are selling ice skates to a hippie in the desert. How do you do so? Type things. I gave it an okay review, but I've dropped it now because there's so many of these games out there. But Wait, There's More is probably the best of the lot, that this has not actually held its weight over time. Ice Capades. If you notice, my rating is a 5.5 because it almost makes it as a good game because it comes with like 100+ dice. That's really cool. But the game itself is just random lucky stuff. Some people will like it, but probably not for me. Then Crooks. This is a game in which you're laying cards down in different columns, and it's almost area control-ish, but you can also change the value of the card you're fighting over. There's a lot of luck in the game and some strategy. It's light fun. Then we have Catan Family Edition, and that is a Settlers of Catan for families. Good if that's what you're looking for. Sakuro. This is a soccer game, football, for those of you outside America, that I thought was fine. It was a decent game. It's kind of fell down for me. I don't play sports games as much. Sports is really hard to translate into a board game very well, other than racing. And soccer is one that people are trying to do all the time. This one is better than most, but I don't know. I haven't had the desire to play it since then. Tooth and Nail Factions. This is from Smallbox Publishing, which has since been bought by Colossal Games, and so it'll be interesting to see if this is one of the games they bring back. It's kind of like a collectible card game, but in a box and you have these different factions that go up against each other. I thought it was interesting. Wasn't a huge fan of the graphic design. Where that changed, I think I would like this one more. Visualize. This is a game in which you roll dice and make pairs of dice and try to come up with compound words, also leading to more arguments than almost any other party game I have. But I still think it's a lot of fun. Visualize. Basilica. This is a tile-laying game, a card-laying game. If you play it, you're like, oh, kind of like Carcassonne. Well, not quite, but it's very interactive, works well with 2 players, and you're building something together. I think the graphic design probably could have been better. Basilica. Then we have Hooyah, the Navy SEAL card game. Now this one, actually, I haven't heard much about it since then. This was a cooperative game in which you're working together to go rescue someone from terrorists, like you're a Navy SEAL team going to do that, and you have a mission to accomplish, and I liked it, but it got almost no buzz on landing. Quarriors, Quest of the Gladiator. I've cooled a little bit on Quarriors, mostly because Dice Masters. This was not the best expansion. This one was fine. It came up with a lock. After the Quarterfax one, this one also has the worst name, Quest of the Gladiator. But it had the lock mechanism where dice could get locked, and so that was interesting. Then we have Masters of Commerce, which has since been reprinted as Panic on Wall Street. Panic on Wall Street is a great game. It can play up to 11 players. It's a simultaneously play game where there's 2 different groups of people. There are bankers and there are landowners, and they're all dealing with each other, and one banker is going to win and one landowner is going to win. Can you make that happen? And then Pompeii, Sam and I took a look at that 5 years ago, or the downfall of Pompeii, in which you're trying to get people out of the city, as many as you can, before the volcano erupts. It is hilarious fun, very interactive, has a little volcano in which you throw people, which sounds really morbid, but since they're little wooden discs, and it also happened 2,000 years ago, I guess it doesn't bother me as much playing this. It's just a lot of fun. Finally, 10 years ago, I took a look at Wicked Witch's Way, this Katala racing game, kind of a speed collection game type thing. I don't know that it's held its weight that much over the years, but it was one of the first games I've seen that came in a book, or the box looked like a book. That's done a lot more these days. Then Lifeboat. This one I've cooled on a bit, but in this one you are trapped in a lifeboat with several other people. You love one of them, you hate one of them. Could be the same person, could be yourself, and you got to figure out who you're going to throw out of the boat as time goes by, or make swim, or ration out the water too. It's a very, very mean game. It's Alive! It's a game about building monsters. I like this one. It's a decent game as you're collecting the different monster parts and building them. They actually came up with I honestly can't remember what the new version of it was, but it had something to do with candelabras. As you got different candles, they rethemed it later on. But it's a solid game. It's Alive. And then Uptown, which has been released recently as blockers, which is fine because the theme of Uptown meant nothing. And in this game, you're placing different things on a grid. And if you know me, you know I like grids, trying to form different groups and stuff and get points that way. A lot of fun. Uptown. Folks, those are the reviews I did 1, 5, and 10 years ago. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this has been Look Back on the Dice Tower.